rest of that. So today, I'd like to talk about two things. Today, in the first hour and a quarter, I want to talk about tefillah and brachot, which means really I want to talk about the difference between tefillah and brachot, but our topic is brachot. But since they're so closely related, I think it needs to be understood the difference. I think it's also unique to the Jewish experience that we differentiate between the two things, and at the same time they are intertwined because you have brachot within the tefillah, like the Shmoneh Esrei brachot, the 18 benedictions, which is actually 19 benedictions, but we still call it the 18 benedictions. Of course, that's like the Wednesday Bridge Club, which meets every Thursday, but that's just been our tradition to call it such. So that's what I like to do. In the second half, we'll talk about the categories of the brachot. Okay, so without further ado, let's go into this. So I have a page here I want to just share with you for a second. And it is here somewhere, but for some reason I don't see it. Hold on. Yes, it is. Okay. Okay. First, I want to talk about tefillah. What is the word tefillah in Hebrew? What is lehit palel? What exactly does that word mean? Lehit palel. It's actually, even in Hebrew, it's a very unusual word.
To
It means
pray?
to pray. That's correct. It means to pray. Lehit palel. By the way, in English-speaking countries, and actually among Ashkenazic Jews in general, they don't usually, unless they're speaking Hebrew, they don't say lehit palel. What do they say? What Ashkenazic Jews say when they're not
Daven.
speaking Hebrew?
Davening?
Daven, yes. In English, they spell it something like this, to daven. What does it mean to daven? It means, of course, Emma?
To pray?
To pray, of course, yes. And in fact, in countries where Jews are not speaking Hebrew, if you say to pray, for them it'll sound a little bit not Jewish. You have to say to daven. It's like, if you want code words that Jews use when they live in various countries, at least Jews who are slightly traditionally oriented, so they never say to pray, they always say to daven. Like they never say synagogue, they always say, Ashkenazic Jews,
Shul?
Shul, which in German, of course, means a school, but school was never used by Yiddish-speaking Jews until the modern era, when they started calling general schools Volksschuls, but in general, shul actually meant the synagogue. So, there's certain lingo that you have to learn, especially if you hang around Ashkenazic Jews. Sephardic Jews who are living in English, French, etc. countries, they will usually say Beit Knesset, unless they're among Ashkenazic Jews, then they'll say Shul also. It's like when in Rome, sort of like. But they will say Beit Knesset. They won't say necessarily going to synagogue. You find, let's say you go to the Portuguese synagogue in Amsterdam, the people go there will say we're going to the Beit Knesset. They won't say that they're going to synagogue. It's the more assimilated Jews who say they're going to synagogue. And in the United States, you also have the term temple for some of the Reform synagogues. Okay, what does daven mean? What does that word mean? It's a bit of a mystery. Some people think the word daven comes from the Latin divine, right? Godly, what we would call the service of God. Right? The tefillah is called the avodah, the service of God, praying to God, right? We say that the world stands on three things: ala Torah, al havodah, val gmilut chasadim. That's Pirkei Avot, chapter 1. The world stands on three things: Torah, meaning the study of Torah; avodah, which refers to the offerings in the temple. But today, where we don't have the offerings, the tefillah, the 3 prayers a day, are instead of that; and gmilut chasadim, which is doing good deeds, which includes all of the commandments. Okay, so daven there either is from the word divine, that's one possibility. Another possibility is actually from Hebrew, It would be de avinu, for our father, of our father. De avinu, daven. Avinu malkeinu, our father, our king. So these are the two possibilities of the word daven, but de facto, the word daven means lihit palel. But let's go back to the Hebrew. What does lihit palel mean? What exactly does this word mean? So let me write it in the Hebrew. You have lihit palel. Did it come out? Yes. So lihit palel. If you notice, for those of you who are good at Hebrew linguistics, lihit palel is what? What time frame is it? What zman is it within the in the Mivnei Poal?
It's infinitive.
No, the infinitive would be palel. It would be actually mitpael would be reflexive.
You sure? Because it's like it's the same form as leit labesh. It's infinitive to palel, but in a reflexive form.
Oh, okay. Wait. So you're saying lehit labesh is infinitive?
Yes.
Okay, like in French, m'habiller.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's something I do to myself, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Oh, okay, fine. That's what I meant actually. Lehit palel. I thought the term was reflexive. It's something which you're doing to yourself. It's mitpael, we would say in Hebrew. The question is, what are you doing to yourself? See, when I am getting dressed, I'm dressing myself. But when I'm praying, am I praying to myself? What exactly is going on here? Why is it in the mitpael form? What does it mean? So then the question is, what does the word lehit palel come from? So the root here is palel, pei lamed lamed. Now, pei lamed lamed, we have two words in the Bible which relate to pei lamed lamed. The most obvious one and the easiest connection is in the book of Breshit, when Yaakov, is going to meet Joseph after 17 years that he did not know. It's 22 years that he didn't see him. And because he's told by the brothers that Jacob is alive, and then he meets him, and he wants to bless his children. And he says to Yaakov, who are those children? And Yaakov says, these are the children that God gave me. And Yaakov says, Re'ei fanecha lo filalti, v'hinei herani Elokim et zarecha. Look, your face, I did not even hope to see anymore. I gave up hope. Lo filalti, I didn't expect to see you again. And now God is showing me your children. So the word lefalel means to expect, to hope. So then that would be one meaning of the word tefillah, from the word lefalel, in the sense to expect and to hope. When we pray to God, we are hoping that God will grant our request. So that's the word lefalel. But then the next question is, then why in the infinitive? Why is it something about yourself? What does it mean to hope to yourself? So this probably relates to the second possibility of the word pei lamed lamed. And this one is actually taken from, I think it's next week in Parshat Mishpatim in Shmot. I can check that again. Unfortunately, I have too many things open here simultaneously, so it's going to be a little bit hard to check it.
We're not in Mishpatim now?
I think it's in Mishpatim. I'll tell you in a moment where exactly it is called.
Are we in Mishpatim this week right now?
Coming up, yes.
Not coming up, but I thought right now.
I mean, the Shabbat, yes. Okay,
The
so
Shabbat will be the ending of Mishpatim, but we're on this third day of
we do
Mishpatim.
the first one, that's correct. So we're talking about Shmot. Okay, this is Shmot 21:20. No, Shmot 43. I don't know what they're doing here. Okay, it's Shmot 43, verse 21. That's what it says here. 43, verse 21. The term is, I'm not going to go into the verse. There's a whole case here of somebody who hit a woman who was pregnant. But anyhow, you have the term here, Venatan biflilim. And since it also, Venatan biflilim means that it has to be like an inspection. In modern Hebrew, plili means criminal. So you do an investigation. So plili would it would be then be sort of like an investigation. So then you would have tefillah, meaning to investigate. Now that would make sense that it's in the infinitive. I'm investigating myself. Why am I investigating myself? Because I want to know if I am worthy for God to answer my prayer. Maybe I'm not worthy. So as you're expecting lefalel and hoping, at the same time, there is a certain personal work which is going on where you're wondering, am I worthy for God to answer my prayer? So these are the two sides of tefillah. So tefillah is the noun, but we say lihit palel is the verb, and the verb is something I'm doing about myself. So what am I doing about myself? I'm doing about myself, that I'm inspecting myself. Am I worthy? Rabbi Yaakov Moshe Charlap, who passed away in the 1960s in Jerusalem, was a close student of Rabbi Abraham Isaac Cook. By the way, which bracha do I make on coffee? Anybody know?
Shehakol.
Excellent. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'akol nihiyeh bidvaro. What if I put in rice milk into the coffee? What's the bracha? It's still shehakol. Right. Okay. So these are the two possibilities of tefillah. As I said, one of them from the word from expectation. Hitpalel, the word lefalel. I didn't even expect to see you, he says. Yaakov says to Yosef. So the hitpalel is either expectation and hope. The second possibility, of course, is investigation. Really means introspection. I'm checking myself to see if I am worthy of having my prayer answered in a positive way. I know that nowadays the term chiyuvi, positive, is not a positive thing. And most it used to be. Okay. So now okay, hitpalel. So expectation and hope, and one side investigation. So Rabbi Charlap says, what is the point of prayer? If we say that God is all-knowing and that God even knows the future, so what are we praying for God for? In the sense that if we deserve something, wouldn't he already give it to us? And if we don't deserve it, then why are we wasting his time? So he said, and if you say that through prayer you're going to change God's mind, are you saying that God is not perfect, that he thought about something he didn't think about before, about you? Okay. So he says, philosophically, what exactly does it mean to pray? Because in a sense, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to change God's mind? So Rabbi Charlap says, no. The point of prayer is to change you. We're giving God the same message we gave before, but we're standing before God and saying, I know before you didn't help me in this case because I didn't deserve it, but look at me now, I think I do. Okay, I've worked on myself since last time, I'm in a different place. So the change is not in God, it's in us. That's what Rabbi Charlap says. So that's the sense of lifalel, in the sense investigation. We want self-introspection in order to understand what we need to improve. I think it was the Chafetz Chaim who once said, if after the tefillah you're the same as you were before the tefillah, so why did you pray in the first place? So the idea is to create some type of change. You know, we have a lot of words in the tefillah. And it's very difficult to hold your intent, have kavanah through all of the tefillah. First of all, it's not only because it's a lot, but it's also counterintuitive. Because when you speak, first you think, or at least hopefully first you think, but first you think and then you say. In prayer, it's the exact opposite. First you say and then you have to think about it. So it's counterintuitive. That's why it's so difficult, by the way, to have the right intent when you do tefillah because it's counterintuitive. So it's not surprising that so many people have difficulty in tefillah. Some people say, how come after the Shmon Esrei, we say, oh, say shalom, hu yaseh shalom, what's the shalom, shalom at the end? So they say the reason is during the silent Amidah, our mind was in Italy and in France and in Australia and South America and Africa. We're all over the place. Then we wake up and say, oh, hello, everybody. So your mind drifts when you can't hold yourself together, right? But that's a real problem in tefillah. The problem with kavanah is a serious problem because of this counterintuitive thing. But the reason why there's so much in the tefillah is that hopefully at one point, at one verse or one line, we'll say it properly. That's what some people say. So, if you can catch that one word, that one line, that will change everything. Because, things can change in a moment. That's just life. And you never know when that moment's going to happen. The Talmud says the Yeshua, the redemption happens like a blink of an eye. Happens like a blink of an eye. It just happens. You didn't even know that it happened. There, all of a sudden, everything's different. And as we know, the world can change in the blink of an eye. Somebody said, when they asked you 5 years ago, where do you see yourself in 5 years? You got it wrong. Okay. Yeah, I'm referring to the pandemic. Okay, not to being in Israel. That you got right. Okay, so tefillah, as I said, is there are two. First of all, two aspects in the word tefillah. One is to request, expectation, to hope for something, and the second one is introspection. Having said that, both those ideas are within the idea of request, what is called in Hebrew bakasha. Bakasha. And because request entails two things. I'm hoping and expecting something, and at the same time, I'm wondering if I deserve it. It's at the same time, this introspection. But there's a second part of tefillah, because one part of tefillah is bakasha, which is request. And there's another part of tefillah, which is just the connection. And that the Talmud in brachot spells this out, and I'll go back to this page. Talmud in brachot says like this. This is chapter 5 in brachot. So it says, King Solomon makes his famous prayer in 2 Kings chapter 8, after he built the temple. And he mentions the temple as the place where God will listen to the Rena and the Fila. He says, this is the place I built, Lishmoa. We also use this in our prayers in Yom Kippur. Lishmoa el harina el hatfila. This is the place. Oh, I'm sorry, that was in English. I think I have it now. Lishmoa el harina el hatfila. So the Talmud says, what is the difference between Rina and Fila? Is it the same? The Talmud says something very unusual. The Talmud says, Rina zo Fila, Tefila zo bakasha. So the Talmud says like this, Rina is referring to prayer, and the word Fila is referring to request. Now, the only problem is, in logic, if A is B and B is C, then A is also C. So what did you just say here? If Rina is Tefillah and Fila is Bakasha, that means Rina is also Bakasha. So what's the difference? No, what the Talmud is trying to say is like this. There are two parts to prayer. Rina, which literally means to sing jubilously, my lips shall be jubilant to you as I sing to you, it says in the Psalms. So Rena is prayer, and the term prayer is referring to request, which means Rena is the part of prayer when I just want a connection. The term tefillah is the part of prayer I'm asking for something. So there are two parts to prayer. There's the connection and when I'm asking for something. Of course, that would seem to be, since the term tefillah itself is used here to refer to when I'm asking for something, it sounds like the main part of tefillah is asking for something. But there's another part which is called the connection. What's the difference? I always use the example of how a man and a woman use a telephone. So we still have telephones. So that example, even though I used it for the first time 15 years ago, they're still here. They just look different. Okay. It's a good thing it's not an example about a tape recorder, which you probably don't even know what that is. So, yeah, if I ask my nephews, have you ever heard of a record player? They say, oh yeah, that's one of those plastic CDs or something. Yeah. Okay. So the records. So what's the difference? So when a man's on the telephone, they want information. The information is finished. They say bye, and nobody gets hurt. So when two men are on the telephone, they pass information on the telephone. They got the information. They hang up. Okay. When two women are on the telephone, they want a connection. What they're saying is secondary. Okay. So that's why in the middle they might say, oh, I have to look at something. It's on a fire. Can you hold on for a second? Then they'll come back, right? Oh, there's something else. Oh, yeah. And then the other one will say the same thing. This could go on for an hour, right? Now, the trouble is, of course, when a man and a woman are on the same telephone, then it becomes problematic because then the man runs out of information and he's about to say bye. And the woman says, why are you going? He says, well, didn't we finish the conversation? Oh, you want to finish the conversation? Is that what you're saying? You understand the problem here. Men are from Mars and women are from Venus, right? You know that book. So anyhow, so this is sort of like the difference in tefillah between request, which is the information I want God to hear from me, or just having a connection. There are two parts to tefillah. One is I want to be connected. I don't want to be, yeah. So what's that song? Don't want to be alone anymore. So, right, a religious person is always knows that God is around. So you're never a Robinson Crusoe in that sense.
I really like Robinson Crusoe. I have no problem being alone. I like being alone.
Well, maybe that means you have a great faith. So you're always
I do actually. I do.
Okay.
I got me. I'm not alone.
That's good.
Let's go and have some fun.
Yeah. There's a book by Heschel called Man is Not Alone. So that's one part. And the other part is requesting. I want to give another example. This is an interpretation by Menachem Mendel Mikotsk, who was a Hasidic Rebbe and a student of the Chose, the seer of Lublin. And he lived at the beginning of the 19th century. So Menachem Mendel Mikotsk says, I have a problem with the story of the Garden of Eden. He says, I don't understand what's going on. He says, I know it happened wrong. Adam and Eve ate from this tree, which God said not to eat from. Okay, I got that. But he says, the punishment I don't get, because let's start with Adam. Adam, it says, since you didn't listen to me, so therefore, by the sweat of your brow, you shall eat your bread. You'll plant and all these thorns and thistles will come out. You'll wait for the rain. It'll be difficult to eat your bread. Says, okay, I got that. That's a punishment. Eve, harbe etzvonech ve'her be'etzav tildi banim. Your birth pains will be great. The whole ordeal of bringing a child into the world would be difficult. Be'etzav, it's going to be a lot of frustration, a lot of difficulty. I got it. That's a punishment. But let's think about the snake for a moment. It says you're going to crawl on your belly and you'll eat the dust of the earth. wait a second. If you can eat the dust of the earth, that means wherever you go, you got food. So where exactly is the punishment? Can you imagine if everywhere we could eat everything? Right? Okay, maybe it doesn't taste so good, but you'll never be hungry. So what's this? You can eat the dust of the earth. It says, where's the punishment? Okay, I'm not going to say whether this is the simple meaning of the text or not, but it's an interesting question. Sometimes, by the way, Hasidic questions are for the answer. So Menachem Mendel of Kutz says like this. He says, let me tell you what it really means. God says to Adam, Adam, we were together in the garden. You could hear my voice during the day. I thought we had a good relationship, but I guess you forgot I'm here and you ate from that tree. So you know what, Adam, I'm going to make sure you never forget. Every time that planting season comes along and you want the rain to fall, you can say, God, just let the rain fall. Let me have a good crop, and then I'll be a good boy the rest of the year. Just let me have a good crop. So you'll never forget me because this will go on for months. He says, Eve, unfortunately, you forgot me too. So it's going to be like this. Every time you're waiting to have childbirth, you're going to go through such pain. You're going to say, God, please just let me get through these next couple hours and you'll see how good I'll be. And every time you have to bring a child into the world, you'll never forget me. So we got this worked out. But then God says to the snake, says, you know what? I don't want to talk to you anymore. You got your food. Don't call me. That is the punishment. That's the ultimate punishment of being cut off. So,
But also he gave to snakes powers so poisonous and so scary. Why is that? It's like a gift, I'm the snake.
well, I don't know if it's a gift because snakes are really afraid of human beings. If we, if you see a snake and you move, they bite you. If you don't move, they don't, because basically they're afraid. And every movement that you're going to do, they're afraid you're going to hurt them. And the worst thing to do is to bend down because then they think you're looking for a rock.
For sure, but they're poisonous. I
Right.
mean,
But I'm just
they
saying.
have certain power.
Yeah. So people who are, know about snakes, myself not included, but people who know about snakes, they know exactly how to treat them and how to make the snake not nervous about them.
That's
And
right.
also Python, pythons, they're squeezing the life out of human, and it's the only creature that the heart rate is going 40 times up. No ever creature, because if our heart rate goes up, we basically have a heart attack. So it's
You're saying
very
that the python does that?
Yeah, the python is choking you, breaking your bones. It's not poisonous. Until the last spread, he's waiting, and then he's eating the prey. And once he's eating a humongous
Let's go back. So let's get back to this. So there are two parts to tefillah. There's the connection, and there is the request. By the way, in halacha, tefillah is seen first and foremost as representing request, and secondly, connection. But philosophically, it's first connection and then request. Because halacha looks at the practicalities, and philosophically, we look at the meaning, if you know what I mean. So all the Kabbalists, like Chaim Volozhin, will say tefillah is first and foremost the connection, but you're also allowed to request things. Whereas in halacha, they'll say first and foremost, it means to request something. Secondly, of course, it's connection. But if you remember when you probably studied the tefillah with Rabbi Ariel, you'll see there's three parts to the tefillah. Or maybe with Shira you do it. The three parts of the tefillah, the Shmoneh Esrei, the silent Amida. Part one, the first three blessings are called Shevach, adoration, praise. The last three blessings are called Hodaya, which means thanksgiving. And the middle 13 blessings, today's 13 because they're 19, are requests. The requests that we make in the Shmoneh Esrei are all public requests. They're all in the collective, whether it's sustenance and rain, or the ingathering of the exiles and the building of Jerusalem, and etc. So all, and refuah and health. So somebody I know who's in the hospital with a hard time. So what would I say? So you have in the tefillah already in the Shemon Esrei, the praise at the beginning, the thanksgiving at the end, which both of them are not about the request, and the request in the middle. But philosophically and Kabbalistically, the prayer is first and foremost the desire for connection. And secondly, the request. How does this make its way into halakha? I'm going to show you an interesting argument. Not an argument, but a machloket, we say, a dispute. Know that we pray 3 times a day, right? Shacharit, Mincha, Arvit. Shacharit, we do in the morning. Officially, it should be done up to the 4th temporal hour of the morning. Did you study temporal hours yet? Yeah. And then, but if you didn't get up early enough, you can do it until the middle of the day, which is called the 6th temporal hour, where the sun is overhead. Mincha is from 6.5 temporal hours, which means the beginning of the afternoon, officially until sundown, but you can still do it if necessary after sundown until the stars come out. And Mariv is all night. So the tefillah is 3 times. In a moment, I'll show you from the Talmud why 3 times. So the tefillah is 3 times, but that's rabbinically. What about from the Torah? Is there an obligation from the Torah to pray? Or is it just instituted instead of the offerings in the temple? Or is there actually a Torah obligation? And if such, where does it say in the Torah that you have to pray? This is an argument between Maimonides and Nachmanides. Maimonides, Rambam, ben Maimon, and Nachmanides, Ramban. Right? Maimonides is 12th century, Nachmanides is 13th century Spain. Maimonides says that there's a Torah obligation to pray every day, at least once a day. He derives this from a midrash halakha called the Sifri, on the verse in Devarim chapter 11, which is the V'hayayim Shamoah, the second part of the Shema, which we say every morning and every evening. So it says in the Shema, in the second part, La'ava et Hashem Elokechem lo'avdo b'chol levavchem, to love the Lord your God and to worship him with all your heart. So the Sifri says, how do you worship God with your heart? And the Sifri answers, that's prayer. That's called worshiping God with your heart. It's called prayer. So according to the Sifri, it looks like there's an obligation to worship God with your heart on a daily basis. From that, Maimonides concludes that there's a mitzvah from the Torah to pray at least once a day. That's why, by the way, that even though the rabbinic prayers 3 times a day are contingent on time, and women are not obligated to keep a mitzvah which is contingent on time, but according to Maimonides, since from the Torah the obligation is daily and not contingent on time, only rabbinically it is, so women have an obligation to pray at least once a day. A man has to pray from the Torah once a day and rabbinically 3 times a day. There's an interesting dispute about Mariv, but that's the second thing. For Maimonides, you have to pray at least once a day. What is the definition of praying once a day? Let's say I don't have a Siddur, I don't know Hebrew. Define what it means to pray once a day. Maimonides says it means making a request from God. Understand how the halakha defines prayer as making a request. When you're asking God for something, that becomes prayer. Nachmanides doesn't agree that the Torah obligation is once a day. He actually doesn't, he says that what the Sifri says about that verse, it's an interesting interpretation, but a non-obligatory interpretation. The Sifri is just giving us an idea. What it means to worship God means through prayer. It doesn't mean that you have to do it every day. That's what Nachmanides says. So Nachmanides says, so what is there an obligation from the Torah to pray? Nachmanides says yes, but only in times of trouble. And he learns it from the book of Deuteronomy, Devarim, where it says that when you are in times of trouble, meaning the enemy is lining up on the fronts of on the borders of your country, so you call out to God and he will be with you in battle. So since it says you call out to God, we have a Torah obligation to pray to God in times of stress and duress and times of trouble. Now you might say, well, what does that mean? Are you trying to say that the Torah says you only have to pray when you're in times of trouble and the other times not? Well, I think Nachmanides, well, first of all, Nachmanides, of course, believes that you have to pray 3 times a day because we don't differentiate in practice between rabbinic and Torah obligations, at least when you're commanded for them. But I think what he's saying is like this. When a person is in time of trouble, what is their default position? Who do they turn to? I was talking to a friend of mine today and lives in Ramat Gan. Not very religious, nice guy. He likes fighting with the neighbors, but he's a nice guy. So his wife just had an operation a couple of weeks ago. I said to him, "How's she doing?" So he says to me, even secular people, sometimes they want to turn to God at times like this. She's doing okay. I said to him, yeah, it's true. Even secular people, they turn to something. So, yeah. We always said there are no atheists in foxholes. But anyhow, so I think for Nachmanides, the idea is, for the Torah obligation is, where are you in times of your duress? If times in your duress you're praying to God, at least you hit the minimum. Okay. If in times of trouble you don't, then my friend, you're in trouble. So that's what I think it's sort of like to tell us. But you just should know this is an argument between Nachmanides and Maimonides and the Sefer HaMitzvot. Nachmanides in his commentary to Maimonides' Book of the Commandments, where he talks about the command of tefillah. Now I want to show you one other place about tefillah, and this is where the Talmud talks about we're supposed to pray 3 times a day. Can you see this? Chot 26b. See it?
Rabbi Rafi, can I ask a question?
Yeah, why not?
Okay, so to see if I'm getting this right, I'm understanding that when we pray, there's 2 parts. One is the Rena, that it's like praying with jubilee.
The connection.
The connection, exactly. Yeah, connection. And the other one is the tefillah. And then the structure of the tefillah
And
is
tefillah means request. Even though we use tefillah in general for both, and that's why the Talmud says Rina is the tefillah part of the tefillah, and the tefillah is the bakasha part of the tefillah. That's what it really means. Tefillah is a general term, but it has 2 parts. One which the Talmud refers to as Rina, which is the connection, and the second part, which is also within the word tefillah, because I said tefillah is to hope and to expect, which is the request.
The bakasha. Okay, so then according to this, tefillah cannot happen if we don't have those 2 sides. Like if we do the connection, but we don't do the bakasha, we're
Let
not
me put it
doing
this way.
complete.
Once we ask God for something, we're really looking for a connection, right? But from our sources, because if you didn't want a connection to God, you wouldn't turn to God in the first place.
But what if it's the other way around? What if you just want connection, but you don't need to specifically request for something?
That's fine. As I said, in Nefesh HaChaim, Chaim Volozhin passed away 200 years ago in 1821, the well-known student of the Vilna Gaon. He said that the tefillah is predominantly for clinging to God in connection. He said, if anything, it's to help the upper worlds, that we want to be partners with God in creation. But he says, unfortunately, because we are finite human beings, we need things, so we also ask for things. But he says that should be secondary to our tefillah. It should not be the primary aspect of the tefillah.
Right.
That's the goal. Can every human being reach that goal? I don't know. Maybe if they work on themselves.
Okay. So
You know,
it's
we have
not,
people who live in a tefillah awareness. Like it said, like King David says, Shiviti Hashem lenegdi tamid. I always put God in front of me at every moment. Kimi mini balamot, because he's always on my right side. You know, there's a story about two rabbis, Reuven and Shimon. And Reuven became really popular, and all these people came to Reuven's house to ask him questions and in Torah and life and whatever. And Shimon was also a scholar, but nobody came to him. So one time they bump into each other at the Beit Knesset, and Shimon says, tell me, Reuven, how come everybody goes to you, nobody goes to me? I mean, we studied with the same teachers. I mean, I'm not complaining, but I'm trying to figure it out. Reuven says, you know why? Because I can read thoughts. Shimon says, you can read thoughts? Says, yep. Says, okay, tell me what I'm thinking about right now. Reuven says, not a problem. Right now you're thinking about, I place God before me at every moment. He's always on my right side. Shimon says, you know, just at this moment, I wasn't thinking about that. Reuven says, that's why they come to me. Okay, so there are certain people who live their lives on that level.
uh-huh.
Those are the people you want to be your teachers. Yeah.
Okay,
Of
so,
course, I might have to resign over that because I can't claim to be on that level. It would be nice to be on that level, and that's definitely a struggle. I'm just saying, if you can meet people like that, those are the ones who are going to inspire you in your life. And by the way, they don't have to be great scholars. Sometimes they're just saintly. You know, you have that too. You have people like that their whole life is really dedicated, and they just look like the average Joe. So, you know, when we talk about hidden tzaddikim, hidden righteous people, it doesn't mean that you don't know who they are. It means you had no clue about who they were. They just seem like everybody else. They don't have to wear funny clothes. They don't have to talk weird. Right? They don't have to look like they're in the days. They can look just like everybody else, but it's just who they are.
yeah. So just to make sure that I understood, because what confuses me a little bit is that, okay, so the Rena and the Bakasha is part of the same concept of tefillah. Like it's not
Yes.
consequential. But at the same time, the structure of the tefillah is
The structure of the Shemona
adoration,
Esrei, which is, by the way, referred to very often as tefillah, because it's the main part of prayer.
Mhm.
Since its main part is request, it starts off with praise and it ends with thanksgiving.
Uh-huh.
It builds up it teaches you don't just request something. First, you give adoration. And at the end, when you request, you give thanks. Why do you give thanks? Because you don't give thanks only if God answers your prayer. You give thanks for the fact that you're still around. There's always to give thanks for, and there's always what to complain about.
Okay, got it. So there is
Okay, those
a
of us
process.
who have Polish backgrounds, okay, our mothers taught us how to complain. Actually, I didn't have a mother with a Polish background, but many people do. So, but even, you know, complaining, you know, there was this Polish woman told me that her two Polish women are on the telephone. One of them calls her friend. She says, I don't know whether, Agnes, how you doing? Agnes says, I'm fine, thank you. She says, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that you have guests. I'll call you another time. Right. Anyhow, so yeah, so the idea is that you have to know how, you have to show gratitude in life. By the way, to people too. Yeah, you have to show gratitude, because we always look at the you know, the half of the glass that we don't have. It's just a human tendency. Or that guy has more than I do, but you don't know how many problems that guy has because he has more. That's also very often, yeah.
And
For every-
sometimes us maybe for forgiveness also. Thank you, forgiveness. It's not just, hey, I'm requesting this, I got a list.
Well, forgiveness is actually two of the 13
Right.
things. One is, it's personal forgiveness, and it's also collective forgiveness. Yeah. We always do it in the plural because it helps us when we're
And
together with others.
Is it also something very special, like you asked in the group to pray for this person, to pray for someone else is even on a higher level, they say, you
Well,
know.
the higher level is the fact that many people pray. Hen el
Mm.
kabir v'lo imas. Also it says in the Tehillim that God does not turn away the multitude. There's actually been interesting psychological studies on this, by the way, about prayer, people praying for people in hospitals. There's been research done on it. It's the type of research that it's interesting. I mean, you don't know what the reason is, you know what I mean? But it's interesting that it seems to have an effect in that sense. So I've always said that, in my opinion, miracles are not something which don't make sense. It's just we don't understand why they make sense. But maybe one day we will. Maybe if I was a prophet, I would understand how it makes sense, right? So maybe Moshe Rabbeinu understood how it makes sense. So, I don't like the people thinking that something is irrational, absurd. It's irrational to our limited understanding. I always give the example, if you have a ball, and let's say on the ball, here, I'll show you right. Let's do, I have to close this for a second. Okay, see this ball? Let's say on this ball you had two-dimensional beings. Here's one, here's another one. Sort of look like ladybugs or something. Okay, but they're two-dimensional, they're totally flat. So they're going on this ball all the time. So they live in a two-dimensional world because they live in the computer. So now this is Mr. A and this is Mr. B. So, okay, A and B bump into each other. So they say, hello, how you doing? I'm fine, you? Other kids? Fine, whatever, okay. So Mr. A and B bump into each other. Okay, then they go the opposite direction. And then on the other side, they bump into each other again. On the other side of the circle. It'll be very confusing. How did that happen? Okay, they don't know, because remember, circles, you can go around forever. So they probably won't understand how they bumped into each other again, but it'll be just a mystery of their lives. They have no clue. Now, for sure, if I put my finger in between them and didn't let them bump into each other, that would definitely be a miracle. It would be an instantaneous miracle. The other one is just something about life they don't understand, okay? Why they met on the other side of the globe, because they don't know it's a globe. They just wouldn't understand. It would be one of the things, one of the unexplainable events of their world. But if I actually put my hand in there and created a miracle and made them not be able to bump into each other, then that would be mind-boggling for them, and that would probably even dwarf them psychologically. It would be that mind-boggling, okay? And it's only because they're not aware of a third dimension. So this is the way also the Maharal of Prague sort of explains it this way, that this is the idea of miracles. Miracles are sort of like when another dimension interferes with our world for a moment. Okay, let's get back to prayer. So, you see this right over here? Okay, it was stated, Rabbi Yossi, the son of Rabbi Chanina, said, the practice of praying 3 times a day is ancient. By the way, this quote from the Talmud, every time it's bold print, it's the Talmud. Every time it's not bold print, it's the interpretation. But I'll read it anyhow, it just makes it easier. The practice of praying 3 times a day is ancient, but not in its present form. Prayers were instituted by the patriarchs, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and therefore there are 3. Avraham is Shachrit, Yitzchak is Mincha, Yaakov is Maariv. That's according to this interpretation. However, Yoshua ben Levi, first generation Amorah in the land of Israel, said that the prayers were instituted based on the daily offerings in the temple. And the prayers parallel the offerings in terms of both the time and their characteristics. The Gemara comments, it was taught in a Baraita, which is Tanaic statement left out of the Mishnah, in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yossi, son of Hanina, and there's another Baraita which supports the opinion of Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. So we have two sources, one which seems to support the opinion of each one. So, one in the which supports the opinion of Rabbi Yossi, son of Rabbi Hanina, Baraita says, Avraham instituted the Shacharit prayer. As it says, and Avraham came to look over Sdom the day after he had prayed on its behalf. As it says, Avraham rose early in the morning. And since he was talking to God, and he rose early in the morning, it proves that it must have been Shacharit. Okay, I'm going to put this aside, the question of whether that's a proof or not, because in my opinion, they don't mean a proof in the way you're thinking for a moment, but let's just keep going for a moment. And from the context as well, the language, the word standing means prayer. Like it says about Pinchas, and Pinchas stood up and he prayed. So since people stand up to pray, so when it says where Abraham was standing before God, it meant he was praying before God. By the way, he was doing both. He was requesting that God not destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. Yeah. Okay, clearly Abraham was accustomed to standing in prayer in the morning. Isaac instituted the afternoon prayer. As it says, and Isaac went out to converse, or actually lasiach, mean to walk, lasuach, out to converse in the field towards evening. Lasuach can mean to walk as it can mean to walk between the bushes, sichim. But here the Talmud takes it from the shorish shin yud chet, which is to speak. So he was conversing in the evening. You converse with God. Conversation refers to prayer because it says prayer of the afflicted. He is faint and pours out his complaint, his sicha before God, Psalms 102. So Isaac was praying in the afternoon. Jacob instituted the evening prayer, as it says, and he encountered that place, vayifga, and he slept there. And the word encounter means prayer, because when God said to Yirmiyahu, do not pray on behalf of this nation and do not encounter, again the word lifgoa, be, meaning don't push me, because I don't want to hear it. Jacob prayed during the evening after the sun had set. Okay. So that was the first Baraita, which supports this idea that the patriarchs instituted Shachrit, Mincha, and Maariv. But now the Talmud will bring a second Baraita, which seems to support the opinion of Rabbi Joshua ben Levi, that the prayers parallel the service in the temple. That the laws, okay, why did the rabbis say that the morning prayer should be recited only until noon? Because the daily offering, which is called the Tamid offering, is typically brought in the morning from sunrise until the noon. Therefore, Shacharit mimics, even time-wise, the Tamid offering of the morning. And Rabbi Yehuda says, my opinion that the morning prayer may be recited until 4 hours of the day is because the Tamid is till the 4th hour, meaning the argument, whether it's the 4th hour or the 12th hour, is the same argument of when the Tamid offering was brought, until the 4th hour, until the 12th hour of the day. 12th hour is the middle of the day. 12 o'clock, 6th hour of the day. And why did the rabbi say that the afternoon prayer can be recited until evening? Because the daily afternoon offering is sacrificed until the evening. The Tamid of the afternoon is until the evening, and that mimics Mincha. Rabbi Yehuda says that the afternoon prayer can be recited until the mean point of the afternoon, because he believed that that's when the Tamid should be sacrificed. And why did they say that the evening prayer is not a fixed prayer, but it's all night long? Because the limbs and the fats of the afternoon offering were consumed on the fire of the altar all evening until the morning. So that mimics the evening prayer. Okay, so we have is like this. We have two opinions. The opinion of Rabbi Yossi ben Hanina, says that the prayers were instigated by the patriarchs, and the opinion of Joshua ben Levi, who says the prayers really mimic the temple service. Now, from most sources in the Talmud, it seems that the prayers mimic the temple service. If you look most places in the Talmud where it discusses prayer, it seems quite obvious that it's the temple service. And you can bring many proofs for this. We have a verse that says, "Uneshalma parim sfatenu," that our lips shall pay shall do what the bullocks used to do in the temple. Uneshalma parim sfatenu. And if you remember, also in our prayers, we actually mention we have the korbanot in the morning that we read in the prayer service. On Shabbat, we talk about the special offering of the Sabbath. On Pesach, the offering of Pesach. So it's quite obvious that we are connecting the prayers to the temple. And in fact, we even call our synagogues mikdash me'at, little temples, even though we say synagogue, Beit Knesset, but we call them mikdash me'at. So what is this idea that the patriarchs instigated the three tefillot? Remember, the three tefillot are rabbinic. So I'll tell you what I think. Unless you want to ask the question, then I can answer what I think. And then I'll say, I'm glad you asked me that question. So, in my humble opinion, it's the three tefillot represent the three parts of the offerings. And by the way, because there are only two offerings in the temple, there was the morning tamid and the afternoon tamid. And the Mariv service, by the way, is just mimicking the fact that the leftovers were burnt on the offering all night. There's actually a discussion in the Talmud and brachot whether Mariv is an obligation at all. So it's obvious from that question that the tefillot mimic or parallel the temple service. So what does it mean, the patriarchs? I think what it means is like this. Remember, we look at our patriarchs because we want to look how to be a believing Jew, right? We need role models, and they are our role models. The patriarchs and matriarchs become our role models to teach us. So we want to understand. So the way I understand the three patriarchs and the tefillah is that there are three types of prayer. Before we were talking about two aspects within prayer, of the definition of prayer, but now I'm talking about three types of prayer. Type number one, when life is going well. When you pray when life is going well, that's called Abraham. Abraham, whatever he does, he's successful. The man's a winner. He's like the morning when the sun is shining. I got a new day, new possibilities. Maybe I'll get a better job. Maybe I'll get a promotion. Maybe I'll find love in my life. Maybe I'll win the lottery. Anything can happen. It's a new day, right? And the sun is shining. I'm feeling good. So, just had breakfast. So anyhow, so that's Shacharit. Look at what Abraham, his nephew Lot, is taken by the four kings. No problem. He grabs his 314 guys. They beat the four kings. He grabs Lot, takes him away. The man's like, it's unbelievable. Everywhere he goes, people are following him, and he has all these people joining him, and he's very wealthy. And when he goes to bury Sarah, so Ephron ben Sochar says, "Nisi Elokim ata b'tochenu." You are like a minister among our midst. You're royalty. Well, we're not going to say no to you. Okay, so this is Abraham. You know, this guy, everything he does, he's got the Midas touch. Everything seems to work. So Avraham is called Shacharit, praying to God when life is going okay. That's not easy, by the way. It's easier to pray to God when things are not going well. When things are going well, you might forget, right? Because, hey, things are going well. You know the joke they tell about this guy in Tel Aviv. He's coming home after a long day. It's now 8 o'clock in the evening, and he's been at work since 6. He says, God, he says, I know I haven't been the greatest Jew. I know. I'm not denying that. But I am so tired. I don't have the koach to look for a parking spot. I just want to go home. So God, just give me a parking spot and you'll see what I'm going to be. I'm going to take kashrut, more interesting. I'm going to Shabbat. I'll start bringing these things. Just today, help me out. I'm falling apart. He starts driving towards his house, and this semi-trailer truck pulls out from right in front of his building and starts driving away. He says, God, what I just told you 3 minutes ago, forget about it because I already have a solution. He goes to park. Right? That's sometimes the way we are. When life is going well, I don't think of the fact that maybe life is going well because God helps me. So when life is going well, hey, I did that. When life is not going well, hey, God, what did you do to me, right? It says in Mishle, in Proverbs, Ivelet Adam tesalev darko, val Hashem yizaf libo. Man's stupidity destroys their own path, and then they get angry at God. That's just life. Anyhow, but getting back to this, what we were talking about. Oh yeah, so Avraham represents the morning, Shacharit, and it's not easy. I got to go to work. I'm feeling fine, but I got to go to work. So I'm gonna run through this minyan in order to get. I'm a good Jew, so I go to Shacharit. But hey, I only got 20 minutes, so let's get cooking, right? Okay. So yeah, it's more difficult. It's difficult, right, to pray to God when things are going well. That's called Avraham. Avraham knew how to do it. He was living a successful life, and he was still a very righteous person and a spiritual person. The riches and the wealth meant nothing to him. Not everybody can do that. You know how many families were destroyed by winning the lottery? And this is, by the way, factual. Families that were destroyed by winning lotteries. Okay. Then you have Yaakov. I'm skipping for a moment. Yaakov has the exact opposite of Avraham. His life is really tough. First, his mother tells him to steal his brother's blessing, and he knows who his brother is. His brother is like the type of guy, you don't want to mess around with. He's the hunter type, if you know what I mean. So his mother wants him to steal the blessing from his brother. He's really nervous, but she said that she has inside information, so he can't disrespect his mother. And then, of course, obviously the outcome is his brother wants to kill him. So, that was to be expected. So then, of course, he's sent off to Laban's house, hoping to start a new life with a new wife. But his wife is switched. He wanted to marry Rachel, comes out to Leah, and then he's got to work another 7 years, and he tries to act the nice guy and says it'll be 14 years. But then his salary is not exactly paid on time, and he has to have an angel of God do this trick with different types of sheep, with the spots and with the this and with the that, until he actually and even after all that, he's got to run away with his family until Laban catches up with them. And then his son Joseph is sold into slavery by the brother. He says to Pharaoh at the end of his life, Pharaoh says, how old are you? He says, my life was short and bitter and did not reach the years of my father. So Yaakov has a hard time. He has a struggle. He has all these people he has to struggle with. And very different than Avraham. So Yaakov is called praying at night, Mariv. At night you don't see. They're burglars, they're thieves. You can fall into a pit. So if you don't have a flashlight. It's a different scenario. And so that's called praying to God in times of trouble or potential trouble. That's called Yaakov. It's a different type of prayer. And then you have Mincha. What is Mincha? Mincha is called Yitzchak. Mincha is the hardest tefillah in the sense that, especially in the winter, it's in the afternoon when you're right in the middle of everything you finally started. Even if you woke up late in the afternoon, you're busy. Okay, and now you got to catch 10 to 15 minutes for Mincha. I really don't have the time. Okay, Marv is not a problem. This Mincha, it doesn't work. It's not here. It's not there. I just had lunch. I got to leave at 5. It's going to get dark. It's like, when am I supposed to do mincha? It's hard to fit mincha into your day. It's in that sense. Even though it's so short, it's hard to get in there. You have to be a Yitzchak, somebody who is living their lives with the idea of God in front of them all the time. Remember, Yitzchak was willing to give his life for Abraham's prophecy. Because Abraham was told, you shall bring your son, the one that you love, Isaac, onto that mountain. And Abraham understood it as an offering. Because it said an offering, but it's true, God didn't say kill him, but what do you do with an offering? Normally. So Abraham was all prepared. He had the knife, he had the trees, he had, right? And Yitzchak understood too, because Yitzchak said, where's the goat? Where's the sheep? And Avram said to him, God will show us the sheep, my son. Right? So, and it says they walked together. Yitzchak wasn't a little kid. He was at least a teenager. Rashi Bichlal puts him at 37, but that's another discussion. So Yitzchak, even though he was willing to give his life, by the way, when you're willing to give your life, the fact that you didn't doesn't mean anything. I've always said that anybody who enlists to the Israeli army and is willing even to do shmirah on the front line, they are kadosh, they are holy, because they were willing to give up their life for the Jewish people. All our kadoshim, all our chayalim are kadoshim. It's not an easy level to get to. And you could say, okay, they didn't do it for that reason. Their mothers forced them, their peers, their friends, their this, their that. So what? Like they didn't understand that there was a risk? They understood. So what? So it's a big zchut. It's a very big zchut. We can't belittle that. I remember years ago when before I was an Israeli citizen, because I became a citizen in my late 20s, I was studying in yeshiva, and I think I was in Petach Tikva at a synagogue. I can't remember why. And I was just waiting for mincha. I was myself, and there was these two, black hat kids, what we call Haredim, studying in some yeshiva. And some old man comes by, looks at me. He doesn't know me from Adam. Probably doesn't know these guys either. But he sees me with a kippah suga, with a knitted kippah. He didn't know I wasn't Israeli yet, but whatever. And I'm sitting with a friend of mine. And so he says to these kids, he says, you know the difference between the two of you? He says, it's not the black hat and the knitted kippah, he says. He says it's that these knitted kippah guys, they're willing to give up their life for the Jewish people, and you're not. Of course, these boys were young, so they laughed. It's true, though. Anybody, it's not the knitted kippah, it's anybody who goes to the Israeli army, it's really, my opinion, kadosh. That doesn't mean that you don't have to continue. That doesn't mean that you have so many, it just means that you did something exceptional. And, we always think it's the ones who paid the price who did something exceptional. But if you were willing to pay the price, you did something exceptional. That's what happened with Isaac. He was willing. He didn't have to in the end, but it changed his life. My father told a story about somebody who had survived the Second World War. And he went to visit in hospital, and he saw this young man who had survived the war but lost a leg. And he said to him, I'm very sorry that you lost a leg in the war. And said, I didn't lose a leg, I gave it. Yeah. Okay, but getting back to this. So Yitzchak, his whole life, by the way, he's in like a different sphere. He looks at Esav and he can only see a righteous person. He's able to see through the outer shells of people to what the possibilities are. He might have overshot on Esav, but we know that he worked very well with Ishmael and brought him around, according to the Talmud, and was able to educate him. So I guess he figured if I did it with Ishmael, maybe I could do it with Esav too. But, Yitzchak is and according to the Talmud, he's in there in the field in the afternoon. and he's thinking about God because that's what he's doing. And you can actually prove it. It says in the verse there, as they were coming closer to each other, Rachel's on the camel, and she looks and she sees a man in the field, and right away she knows who it is. So she says to Abraham's servant, "Who is that?" He says, "That's my master's servant." And then she covers her face. But it says in that same verse in Chayesara that it says that Yitzchak lifts up his eyes and looks, and he sees camels coming. Okay. He doesn't see the pretty girl on the camel. He can only see the camels coming. She looks, she sees him. He looks, he sees the camels coming. So, okay, this man is living in his own little world, his own little sphere, because he became very insular, I guess, after the Akedah. And he lives in a very spiritual world. But Yitzchak then represents the mincha. The Talmud says that a person should be very careful about the mincha prayer, because ein adam na'ana ela b'tfilat mincha, that you have more chance of being answered at mincha. And they learned that from the story of Eliyahu on Mount Carmel. When Eliyahu on Mount Carmel in the Book of Kings, he has a showdown with 400 Kohanim of the Baal, of this idol worship called the Baal. And of course, it says the whole morning, and he says, we'll see which one can bring the fire from the heaven. So the Baal priests, they start cutting themselves and doing all these different types of things, and in order to reach some ecstatic level. And they say, Habal Anenu, and the Baal, of course, doesn't answer. And it says, Baalot Hamincha, in the afternoon. As the sun passed through the middle of the sky, says Eliyahu said, now it's my turn. And it says that he rebuilt the broken altar of God, and then he dug a furrow around it and poured it with water, and poured water over the altar and poured water over the animal that he had put there, which also filled up around. And he says, God, you have to answer me now. So it says that a fire came out of the heaven, and it consumed the offering and also all the water that was around. And the people bowed down and said, Hashem hu Elokim, said God is the only God. Of course, the next day they were probably worshiping the Baal again, but that's just human beings. So, but this happened in the afternoon. So based on that story, the Talmud says you should be very careful about afternoon prayer, because if it worked for Elijah, it might work for us too. So anyhow, so the way I understand this is 3 types of prayer. Prayer when life is going well, that's called Avraham. Prayer when we hit trouble and turbulence, that's called Yaakov in the evening. And Mincha, with prayer where it's difficult to pray, but that's when you want to try to bring spirituality in your life, to see where you are as a human being. If you can actually bring it into the mundane world, not just when you're in the synagogue, but actually to bring it into your life when it doesn't look like there's any place for it. It's called doing a Yitzchak move. It's not a simple thing to do. Okay, this is what I wanted to say basically about prayer, and we didn't get to brachot yet, so that'll be the second half. So let's take a break now for about 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes. So we'll take a 10-minute break and come back in 15 minutes. So we'll be back at 8:05. We'll make it a little bit less than 15 minutes, okay? We'll be back at 8:05, and I'll put the recording on. Okay. By the way, I just want to point out that the idea of, I think in ancient man, the idea of prayer also was to bring God into your world. And even though that doesn't sound like the most Jewish thing to say, it actually is, because if you look at the book of Ruth, when Boaz meets the harvesters, he says, Hashem imachem, may God be with you. That's the official greeting. And they say, Yevarechecha Hashem, may God bless you. I want to explain the difference between God be with you and God bless you. Okay, we're going to talk about a blessing. He says, Hashem imachem, may God be with you. And they answer him, Yevarechecha Hashem, may God bless you. By the way, when Sephardim get an aliyah to the Torah, they start off, they say Hashem imachem, which is taken from that verse in the book of Ruth, in the book of Ruth. Hashem imachem. Today we say Shalom Aleichem, but Shalom, of course, is a kinui, is a connotation for God. So in that sense, and then you answer Aleichem HaShalom, which of course is the exact same in Arabic. In Arabic, they say Ma'ai Salam, which is really Hashem imachem, right? May God be with you. And by the way, you have the same in English. In English, you have goodbye. You know what goodbye is? Okay, that's because English is not your first language. So goodbye used to be spelled like this. In Old English, goodbye is spelled like this. G-O-O-D W B, no, it's B-W-Y-T. Goodbye. That, excuse me, the W here is a mistake. It's spelled G-O-O-D-B-W-Y-E, and eventually the W was taken out. And in modern English, we write goodbye without the W. What was goodbye? It was God be with ye. Goodbye is an acronym, God be with ye. And you don't want to write God, so you write good. So that's exactly where it comes from, which is the same in the Hebrew, Hashem imachem, from the book of Ruth. May God be with you. And the same in the Arabic. So,
Rabbi, and
but
also in Spanish, when you say
in Spanish,
goodbye,
you say what?
adios. Adios is
No,
like,
adios is like adieu, which means to be with God. No? But of
No.
course, the French only say that when the French only say that if you're not going to see them again, because when they say adieu, it means they're going to God. So, but in Spanish they say it all the time, right? Adios.
yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, adios. Like, you can still meet soon. No, we don't like to say goodbye in Spanish.
Right.
We always want to meet again.
Yeah, good idea. So,
We don't say goodbye in our culture either.
right.
It's see you later.
Well, in Hebrew we say litraot. That's see you later. Litraot. Well, that's a modern word, yeah. But also there is no good way. Shalom aleichem, right? Aleichem shalom. Of course, that's a greeting, and also shalom is just peace. Right. Shalom lo, shalom. You have that also in the Tanakh. Okay, so but let's talk about what does it mean Yivarechecha Hashem. I want to talk about what the meaning of bracha means. What is a bracha? Now I'm going to explain to you that the word bracha in Hebrew means exactly the same as it means in English, blessing. So let's start like this. What does blessing mean in English? People sometimes get mixed up here because they start thinking too spiritually and then they forget the simple meaning of the word in English. What does it mean in English to be blessed?
To wish someone well.
To bless somebody could be to wish someone well. But you know, sometimes we say that person's blessed. What do we mean by that?
They have good fortune.
Yes. You can be blessed with lots of children. You can be blessed with wealth. You can be blessed with a lot of great friends. You can be blessed with a good job, right? When life is going good, we call that blessing. Blessing means an abundance. That's exactly what it means in Hebrew. Bracha means blessing. As it says in Devarim, uberach et lachmecha, and God will bless your bread, which means you'll have a lot to eat. And he will bless your livestock. So blessing means plenty. So in Hebrew, the word bracha means to have more than the minimum. That's to have blessing. Yishlach Hashem bracha be'asamecha. May God send blessing to your silo where you keep the wheat. The asam. We have the Hebrew word osem. It's a company today, right? It's where you keep the wheat, the asam. So we want God to send blessing, that the crops be plentiful and that, etc. So blessing means plentiful. How can we see that in the Hebrew word for blessing? Let's go back to the shared screen. In Hebrew, the word for blessing is beit, resh, and kaf. Of course, we write kaf sofi. Barech or berech, he blessed. Or if it's, or bracha, which is the noun, it's beit, reish kaf, and then we add the hey at the end, so it becomes not a kaf sofi. The shorish is beit reish kaf. What is beit reish kaf? Hey, you know, in the Hebrew letters in gematria, numerical value, you have the digits. From 1 to 10 is aleph till yud. Then you have the tens, which goes from yud till kuf. The tens. And then you have the hundreds from kuf until reish, kuf till taf. 100, 200, 300, and 400. There are three parts to the Hebrew alphabet: the digits, the tens, and the hundreds. The word bracha, you have 2 in digits, 20 in tens, and 200 in hundreds. In each case, it's one more. It's the beginning of multiplicity. Singular is 1. That would be the aleph and the kuf and the yud, right? And the beit, the reish kaf, is having more than 1. That's called blessing. Blessing means having a little bit more than what you need. Some people have great blessings, some people have small blessings. But blessing is to have more. Also in Hebrew, the word berech means a knee. The word berech is a knee. The knee, when you bend the knee, you can walk forward. You can't walk without a knee. So in order to cover ground, to get ahead in life, you need a knee. So blessing is something which pushes you ahead. So it's related, the berech, the knee, to the bracha, which is the abundance. Okay, now after I've said this, the question is, how does this relate to the idea of brachot? So what is the difference between tefillah and brachot? In tefillah, as I said, there are 2 aspects: the connection with God and the request. And there's usually a request. Even though our requests are in the plural, there are places in the tefillah you can also have private requests. In blessings, we don't ask for anything. It's an acknowledgement of God's blessing in the world. We're not asking for anything. Now, this could be a little bit confusing because we do have blessings within the tefillah. So at the moment, I want to talk about blessings which are not in the tefillah, but are standing on by themselves. There are 3 categories of blessings. Let's go back to the page.
Is that why sometimes they called baracha a praise?
Bracha is what?
As praise. Praising Hashem.
No, because bracha is not praising, it's blessing. And we never bless God. We always say it. Okay, I need help again. Who was the one who helped me before? The word baruch means you are blessed.
Yes, but we're
We don't
elevating
bless
ourselves.
God. God blesses us.
Right, yeah, good. God needs nothing from us. I got that.
So we say Baruch Atah Hashem. In the Siddurim, it's translated, blessed art thou. You are blessed, oh God. We're not blessing God.
Right.
And we're not saying thank you, by the way.
We're not
Because
acknowledging God's
There are
sovereignty
blessings of
and praise.
thanksgiving, by the way, but the word bracha does not mean thank you. It means you are blessed. It is an acknowledgement of a fact. You are
But
the
I
source of
thought in
blessing.
English, praise meant to acknowledge the greatness of God.
Praise does, but not blessing.
Uh-huh. So beracha does not mean praise.
That's correct.
Mm.
It means blessing. And blessing only comes in one direction. God blesses us. We can praise God for his blessing. That's the way it works. And of course, everybody can receive blessing in life, but it's the religious person who acknowledges that the blessing comes from God. And others just think it's because of their great talents, or the fact that their parents had great talents. Yeah. So what is the difference between tefillah and blessing? Tefillah, we are asking for something. In blessings, when we're saying, God, you are blessed, we're acknowledging that blessing comes from God.
And also
We're not
tefillot,
asking for anything.
time frame. In tefillot, we have time frame. In brachot, we do not have a time frame to do the tefillot.
A bracha is not a tefillah.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a
And
different
also,
thing.
also,
As I said, the confusing part is that you have brachot within the tefillah. That's the confusing part. I understand that. But the proof is that you have brachot which are not part of tefillah. And most brachot are not part of tefillah. You have three categories of brachot. Let me just write them down right now. Even though I forgot to read this quote on the top, we'll do that if we have time. The three types of brachot. You call it, the first type is called nehenin. Blessings of nehenin, which means enjoyment or benefit. You have blessings of mitzvot. Then you have blessings of thanksgiving. And in Thanksgiving, you have part two, which is called natural phenomena. Okay. Blessings of Nehenin are blessings that refer to I got now a different word here. Food and smell. So it's really taste and smell. Right? It's taste, which is drink and food and drink. And then, of course, the blessings on smell. That's all birkot hanehanin, blessings of enjoyment, which means we're recognizing that blessing comes from God every time we enjoy something. If we eat something, if we drink something, if we smell a nice flower or a lemon or something like that. You have a lot of very fragrant trees and plants in Tel Aviv, by the way. So they have this like vanilla-like type of flower that comes out in some of these trees. Blessings on the mitzvot are blessings that we say before doing a mitzvah. So before you light the candles on Shabbat, there's a blessing. Specifically on Shabbat, of course, we do the blessing after, but we'll talk about that. But usually birkot mitzvot are before. Before you put up your mezuzah, you make a blessing. Before you wash your hands, there's a blessing. And before you put on your talit, there's a blessing. Before you put on the tefillin, there's a blessing. It's called birkot mitzvot. Okay. In general, by the way, all blessings are rabbinic. There's only one blessing which has a Torah basis. Does anybody know what the one blessing with the Torah basis is?
Birkat Hamazon.
Birkat Hamazon. Birkat Hamazon is, it says in the Torah in Dvarim chapter 8, Achalta v'savata v'virachta. You shall eat and you shall be satiated and you shall bless. So since there's a Torah basis, we consider Birkat Hamazon from the Torah, even if the nusach, the formulation of it happened at a later time. But the idea to bless after the meal is Torah-based. All the other brachot are one of the 7 rabbinic mitzvot. Do you remember the 7 rabbinic mitzvot? There are 7 mitzvot which were instituted by the rabbis, mostly in the Second Temple period. What are the 7 mitzvot? Who's going to help me out? Not everybody at the same time, though.
Netilat yadayim.
Netilat yadayim, excellent. Which is netilat yadayim both before the meal and in the morning, because it's a blessing. Okay. Anybody else?
You just said it when you said lighting the candles for Shabbat.
Lighting Shabbat candles. Yeah, there's another candle too.
Hanukkah.
Lighting the Hanukkah candles is a third, right? What else?
Havdalah.
No, it's a minhag. It's
Huh.
not considered a rabbinic mitzvah, but it's a minhag and we keep it, yes. It's an obligation. But actually the mitzvah was doing Kiddush, but Kiddush is not one of the seven. Kiddush is actually at night is a obligation from the Torah. Things that are related to something from the Torah are not considered totally. Okay,
Mikveh.
there's another rabbinic holiday aside from Hanukkah.
Purim?
Mikveh.
Which?
Purim.
Purim. So reading the Megillah is number 4. It's another rabbinic, which really includes the things of Purim, but we have up to 4. What else? One of them I already said, by the way.
Mikveh.
All blessings, except for Birkat Hamazon. All the blessings are rabbinic. Yes, sir. What did you say?
Shehakol?
Oh, no. That's just a blessing. All the blessings. The whole concept of blessings is rabbinic, except for Birkat Hamazon. So that's one of the 5. We got 2 left. 2 left. Hallel, the recitation of the prayer of thanksgiving. Hallel on all the holidays, even the rabbinic holidays. And the last one is Eruvin. Eruvin, there are actually 3 types of Eruvin when you learn Shabbat. You're supposed to learn about that. There's Eruv Tafshilin. People want to cook from Yom Tov before the following Shabbat. There's Eruv Chatzirot in order to be able to carry in a semi-public area on the Sabbath. And there's Eruv Tchumin, how far you're allowed to walk on Shabbat. That's number 7. Those are called the 7 mitzvot of the Rabbanim, of the rabbinic mitzvot, and brachot is one of them. Okay. So Seder. So let's get back to this. So we have 3 categories of brachot. Now, just to remind you again, brachot are not thanks. There is a category called thanksgiving. The blessings of thanksgiving are thanks. But the word bracha does not mean to give thanks, doesn't mean to give praise. It's an acknowledgement. You are blessed, O Lord our God, King of the universe, right? That's our formula. We have what's called the formula. What does it mean you are blessed, O Lord our God, King of the universe? It means I'm acknowledging that all blessing comes from God. We live in this awareness. Living in an awareness is an interesting concept, okay? We're not asking for anything. We're not even showing necessarily gratitude, but it is in a sense showing gratitude. We're acknowledging this is the fact. Okay? And we use it in 3 parts of our lives. When we a basic enjoyment, because food is something which is really all day long, especially in our culture today. I mean, once upon a time, you had to prepare a meal. Now, wherever you go, you can pick up fast food. Okay, a lot of it is junk food, but that's another discussion. But I'm just saying that, for us, food is more social than it is just to get by. And so Birkot and Nanin, once you're making blessings on food, you're really covering the whole day. So it's really something, and it's really acknowledging that, as I said, it's like the Avraham. It's like in the morning, and life is going okay, So have an ice cream, I make a blessing. I don't have to say thank you. I say, I acknowledge that this blessing came from you, God. It's an interesting idea. It's an awareness. It's an acknowledgement. That's called Birkot HaNehnin. And as I said, it's taste and smell. We'll go into the details next week. The second category is mitzvot. And mitzvot, all the blessings. Now, all the blessings are rabbinic, but the mitzvot are sometimes rabbinic and sometimes from the Torah. If it's lighting the Shabbat candles, it's rabbinic. If it's lighting the Hanukkah candles, it's rabbinic. But if it's saying kiddush, it's from the Torah. If it's putting a mezuzah on the door, it's from the Torah. But the blessing is rabbinic. When I put the mezuzah on the door, it's from the Torah, but the blessing is rabbinic. If I put a mezuzah on my door without the blessing, I still fulfilled the mitzvah, but I forgot to do the blessing. Right? I didn't break any law. I didn't fulfill a rabbinic requirement. I was passive. There's no punishment for being passive. So blessings of enjoyment, taste and smell, blessings of the mitzvot. And the third category is thanksgiving and natural phenomena. It's in your, if you have the Art Scroll Siddur, which one did you get? Art Scroll or the Magid? Did you get your Siddurim yet?
No, but I have Art Scroll.
Okay, in the Art Scroll after Shacharit.
We got our Siddur. We got our-
Koren.
Oh, you got the
Fine.
Koren. Okay, so after Shacharit, you have the blessings. And the blessings in the Art Scroll, at least, are found in three categories. The first category is the blessings of Nehemiah, which is called of enjoyment. And then you have the blessings of the Mitzvot. And then you have the blessings of, I'll make a copy for you next time if you don't see it. You got the little Art Scroll, and I'm sure Magid Koren probably also has it. I'm assuming also after Shacharit, that's usually where they put it, right before Mincha. Here it is. No. Yeah, in my little guy, it's on 228. Starts on 220, even earlier. 224 in the Art Scroll. You have here Birkat HaNehnin, the blessings on for enjoyment. Do you have that in your Magid Koren or in your Art Scroll?
I left my Koren at work. I use it at work when I want to pray, and at home I have another one.
Oh, I left my heart in San Francisco.
And now I have two, one at home, one at work.
Very good. So in the Koren, did they have the blessings after Shacharit, like in some of the other Siddurim?
I didn't check. I do just shacharit in the morning.
No, they don't. It's not right after.
You don't have it? Hold on. I have one here. Find out. So let me look in their index where they have it. If you look in the table of contents, you'll find it. Okay, they have it. I have it here in 478. But this is a Hebrew one. If you look in the Koran, the index, they have brachot right before Ma'agal HaChaim. It's right after Hanukkah and Yom Ha'atzmaut. Do you see it in the index? In the Hebrew, it starts on page 465. You'll find in the table of contents, brachot. So it starts with Birkat HaMazon, but then they have, let's see.
It's 973 in the Koran.
Okay, probably because it's doubled up. Yeah, so you have one second, where are the Birkat HaNehnin? Oh, here's the Birkat HaNehnin. Okay, what page does Birkat HaNehnin start on? Such thin pages.
973.
Okay, and what's the first blessing there? Mizonot?
שנייה, אני בודק. ברכת המזונות.
Yeah. So right when you like before cake, you say Borei Minei Mizonot. we'll go into details next time. But Birkat Ne'anin, which is on, okay, I might make a copy for you of the Koran, just of the art scroll, because it's a little bit easier. So just a little bit easier. So you have three categories. Category number one, Ne'anin, which, as I said, is taste and smell. So it's on food, beverages, and smell. Then Birkat Mitzvot, by the way, which are actions. So that's like touch. And blessings of thanks. What did I say? This food. You have blessings of thanks, which also include natural phenomena, are sight and sound. So you have all five senses are covered. You have the sense of taste, which is food and beverage. Then you have the sense of smell. That's all in Birkat Ne'anin. In the mitzvot, actions, which is something you do with your hands. So it's also sense of touch. And in the blessings of Thanksgiving, there's some which are specifically about Thanksgiving, and then natural phenomena, like when you see the rainbow, when you hear thunder, when you see lightning, when you see the sea, you haven't seen it for 30 days. So these are the natural phenomena, which are things that you see and you hear. So you got all five senses. Rambam makes this into three categories. Category number three, I break up into two parts because they are a little bit different. So, as I said, one is Ne'anin, enjoyment. Two is mitzvot. And three, which is called Thanksgiving, I call it 3A, which is actual things of Thanksgiving, and 3B, which are natural phenomena.
Hey, Rabbi, I have a question.
Yeah.
Maybe this is a bit dense, but I have Birkat Hamazon, blessings on mitzvot, then blessings
And in the Koran you're talking about.
It can.
Yeah, they have it a little bit different.
Okay.
That's okay. Birkat Hamazon relates to Birkat Ne'anin, obviously.
Okay.
Yeah, and they usually start with the Tilat Yadayim, even though it's Birkat Mitzvot, but you do that before bread. They're just thinking the way people do things more than the categories. But the categories are three. Ne'anin, Mitzvot, and Thanksgiving, Hodaya, we say in Hebrew. Just call this 3A. It doesn't let me do 3A. I'll try again. 3A. Okay. So what are blessings of Thanksgiving? Can anybody think of blessings of Thanksgiving?
Birkat
The travel.
I didn't hear what you said.
Birkat HaGomel.
Travel.
HaGomel. Birkat HaGomel is, I would guess, probably a perfect example of a blessing of Thanksgiving. The Talmud says, when do you say Birkat HaGomel? In 4 cases, based on Tehillim chapter 106. It says, these Hodul Hashem, these are the ones who praise God. And there are 4. The ones who, here, I'll find it for you. Let me find it if I have it in English. Oh, I'll just translate it. It's Tehillim. I think it's either 106, I think. One moment. One second. No, that's not it.
No?
Okay, nafshi. No. Oh, here, excuse me, 107. Hodul Hashem ki tov kelam chasto. Praise God for he is good, for his goodness. is eternal. And in this Tehillim, you have 4 people who are told to praise God. The first one it says, who crossed through the desert. Then you have the one who went through over the ocean, over the seas. Then you have the one who was imprisoned, and then the one who was unwell. These are the 4, these are the 4 who have to praise God. And this is what we do today too. If you traveled and crossed the desert, if you crossed the sea or the ocean. In fact, most people actually do that even if they took a flight, which you would say is probably not as perilous as it used to be when you had to take a boat in ancient times. But even so, we still do that. So when you cross the ocean or the sea, when you cross the desert, which was also very dangerous in antiquity, when you're hospitalized for at least 3 days, including a person who went through childbirth, and the last is, of course, somebody who was imprisoned, captive, and then set free. These are the ones who say Hagomel. So you'll see in the synagogue, there are many women who say Gomel after childbirth, many people in general who say Gomel after traveling. People say a Gomel when they had a life-threatening accident. Also, Hagomel is said. It's a question whether it's Hagomel or Shafiyanu, but today we do Hagomel. We put that in that category too, because it was perilous, meaning they were in peril. But then you also have a second Thanksgiving blessing is Shafiyanu. When you buy a new garment, except for shoes and undergarments. So Shafiyanu, a new fruit in season, Shafiyanu. These are considered categories of Thanksgiving. We also say Shafiyanu at every major festival in the Jewish world. Actually, every festival, even the Rabbinic ones, we say Shafiyanu. Let's figure it out. Let's start right from the beginning. Rosh Hashanah. When does the woman say Shafiyanu?
Lighting the candles.
Lighting the candles. What about the man? When does the man say Shafiyanu on Rosh Hashanah?
Kid after when you're making kiddush.
When you make kiddush, at the end of the kiddush, exactly. Yom Kippur, when does the woman say Shafiyanu?
Shame women. Would it
Yom
wear
Kippur,
clothes?
when does the woman
No?
say Shafiyanu?
Second day. No, wait.
When she bought a new outfit?
The first
Yom
night
Kippur,
of
Yom
the
Kippurim, and
dress.
Yom Kippur. When do you make a Shafiyanu?
Before I get in the Yom Kippur, when she dress,
Okay, we're a woman. I need a woman to answer this question. When does a woman say Shafiyanu Yom Kippur?
Before
easy-
fasting start,
It's an easy answer.
Are you lighting the candles?
Lighting the candles, the same thing as Rosh Hashanah. You light the candles before Yom Kippur, just like you light candles before Rosh Hashanah, right? When does the man say Shafiyanu? This is the harder question. As I said, every Jewish festival, there's a Shafiyanu, because it's annual. Things that are annual, there's a Shafiyanu. By the way, if you didn't see a good
Do we
friend for
say
a whole year,
blowing the shofar?
Shafiyanu. Actually,
The
some
end
people
of
say
Yom Kippur.
even a month. What?
Nidre?
I didn't hear. I'm sorry. When is the Shafiyanu said on Yom Kippur for men? The women already said it when they lit the candles.
the end of Kippur,
When?
in the end of Yom Kippur, before I get out,
Before you get out at night or the next day?
next day in the night.
No, the Shafiyanu is actually done right before the Marav service. Before the Marav service, the Chazan says Shafiyanu
Just
on
said
behalf of the whole
that.
congregation. It's right in the
You said
Machzor.
that.
Oh, you said that? I just couldn't hear you. Okay, so it's right in the Machzor. There's a Shafiyanu in the Machzor right after Kol Nidre, right before the Marav service. And the woman doesn't actually have to say it because she had it home, but the Shafiyanu say it together with the Chazan. Or you can just listen to the Chazan saying it. Let's keep going. Sukkot. First night of Sukkot. When does the woman do the Shafiyanu?
Lighting the candles inside the sukkah.
Exactly. And when does the man do Shafiyanu?
Kiddush, no?
At Kiddush, exactly. Shmini Atzeret, next holiday, because the rest of the days of Sukkot, we don't make Shafiyanu. It's one per holiday. Shmini Atzeret is considered its own holiday. It's the day after Sukkot. It's like the 8th day. When does the woman say Shafiyanu?
Oh, that's a good one.
They don't say on one time.
I said it's a different holiday.
What, lighting the candles?
When they're lighting the candles, exactly. When does the man say Shafiyanu?
What I'm assuming on the Kiddush?
At Kiddush. It's a different holiday, yes. Do you see there's a common denominator here going on? Okay, let's keep going. What's the next holiday? Hanukkah. When do you make when do a man and a woman make the Shafiyanu?
Lighting the candles the first
Exactly.
night.
There's no Kiddush. Okay, let's keep going. Purim. This is a trick question.
Before reading the Megillah.
Excellent. The Chazan says the Shafiyanu on behalf of the whole congregation before reading
amen.
the Megillah. Pesach, first night.
Kiddush.
Wait, the woman does it, lighting the candle. This should flow already, right?
Yeah.
Okay. The woman before lighting the candles, the man at Kiddush. Last day of Pesach.
Last day of Pesach. Same?
No Shafiyanu, it's the same holiday.
Yeah.
Shafiyanu is one per holiday.
Right.
The only reason we do a Shmini Atzeret, it's considered a different holiday. Okay, let's keep going. Shavuot.
I was gonna ask you about that next.
Shavuot. When do you say Shafiyanu?
Shavuot, probably
Shafiyanu.
like when you light the candles that you do Kiddush.
When the women do, when they light the candles, and the men do it
Like Kiddush.
at Kiddush, same thing. That's it. I think we covered everything. So you have Shafiyanu at every holiday, basically.
What about doing Sukkot doing the shaking the lulav and esrog?
Yes, we also make a Shafiyanu on the lulav and etrog. That's true. In addition, because it's like a new feature. That's correct. So we have a double.
It's the once a year. Yeah.
Yeah. So we sort of have a double, and we do that on the first night. Yeah.
And on
the first morning. I'm sorry. First morning. Yeah. Okay. So that's Shafiyanu. So the Birkat Hodaya, blessings of Thanksgiving, are basically Hagomel Shafiyanu. There are also other ones. There's like Hatova Meitiv. We'll go more into the Hatova Meitiv. You can say, like, for instance, if you got an inheritance, Hatova Meitiv. If you won the lottery, Hatova Meitiv. And since our Talmudic rabbis were wine connoisseurs, if somebody brings you a bottle of wine that wasn't on the table before, and it's much better than the first one, you can make a Tova Meitiv. So you made Kiddush on let's say sweet red wine, which in the States sometimes they call kosher wine. All sweet wines they refer to as kosher wine sometimes, because the Jews were the only ones who bothered to drink sweet wine originally. And then all of a sudden they bring you something fancy, like I don't know, a Golan wine or something like that, which costs 3 times the price. You can make a Tova Meitiv. Yeah. So, but only once. Yeah. Anyhow, so that's also from in Thanksgiving. The second half is natural phenomena that you'll find in your Siddur. As I said, the blessing on the rainbow, the blessing on thunder, lightning. You can look those up, what they are. I'll ask you next time. Okay. So those are the categories. Ehanin, Mitzvot, and Thanksgiving. But number 3 breaks up in 2 parts. Thanksgiving and natural phenomena. They're a little bit different. But the term bracha is just recognizing that blessing comes from God. But there is a blessing of Thanksgiving. Even the blessing of Thanksgiving doesn't start off praise We say, we acknowledge that you are blessed and that you, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, then you are Gomel Chasadim. And you do good to your people Israel by saving us. Or Shafiyanu, that you allowed us to live until this point in our lives. In the annual cycle, we do that once a year. Well, the holidays come around. Okay, so bracha is really acknowledgement of God's blessing, which comes in different forms. There are questions, can you make a Shafiyanu when you get a new job, a new house? You probably can. It's questions exactly, these are things discussed. New job, I don't know. Remember, I'm Fiddler on the Roof, wants a Shafiyanu on his new sewing machine, Matal. Rabbi, make a blessing. Sewing machine. Yeah, okay. So, so these are the different types. One last thing before we call it tonight, I want to talk about a little bit matbea bracha. I'm just going to explain what it is, and I'll talk about it more next time. Matbea bracha means the formula. The formula of every blessing starts Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Ha'olam. Those 6 words are what we call matbea bracha, which literally means the coining of the blessing, or the formula. Baruch Atah Hashem Eloheinu Melech Ha'olam. Blessed art you, O Lord our God, King of the universe. If it's Birkat HaMitzvot, add another 4 words to it. Only in Birkat HaMitzvot do we add these 4 words. Asher. Oops. Ideshanu.
Mitzvotav.
B'mitzvotav. V'tzivanu. We add those 4 words. They're long words, but so then that brings it up to 10. The formula is either 6 or 10. It's normally 6. Kata mitzvot. We add that you have sanctified us in your commandments and commanded us to whatever. And usually it continues either le or al. Le hadlik ner shel Hanukkah or al mitzvat chala, right? So it's either le or al. And that's how it continues. But the formula doesn't change. It stays the same all the time. It's called the formula blessings. And our minhag is not to change the formula. I know that there are some progressive sidurim that they're like playing around with the formula. We don't do that. And we also don't innovate new blessings. You can bless somebody in general or acknowledge blessing, but you can't use God's name unless it's the official formula. We don't, since the Talmud, there has not really been new blessings. Having said that, the blessings were still fluid during the time of the Geonim in Babylonia. The Geonim are the ones who lived from the Talmudic time, from about 500 to 1,000 in Babylonia. So during the time of the Geonim, there was some changing of the structure of the brachot, but very little. The matbea bracha is mentioned in the Talmud, but there is discussion of brachot that were added on during the time of Geonim. In the end, very few were, because even the Talmud brings many brachot which we don't say today, which were discussed in the Talmud, and eventually they did not make their way into our Siddur, but the majority did. And we even have, as I said, blessings which, there are only 2 blessings that I can think of that were added during the times of the Geonim. One of them was added to Birkat HaShachar, Shasali Kol, I think it's Shasali Kol Tzorki.
What is
God,
Yatzar?
that God gives me all my needs.
Where does Yatzar fit into the formula?
It's in the Talmud, Asher Yatzar.
That's
Talmud.
to relieve oneself.
Yes, but it's Talmudic. Oh, where does it,
Yeah, we have the formula.
That's a miracle. It's a miracle, right?
that would be in Thanksgiving. It would actually be a blessing of Thanksgiving.
Ah,
Yeah. So, yeah. And what was I saying here? So there are two blessings. One of those Shasali, which was a controversy and eventually made its way into our Sidur because it's not mentioned in the Talmud. And the second one is Shasani Kirtzano, the blessing that a woman says in Birkot HaShachar was added by the Geonim, which is very interesting. Maybe we'll talk about this more next time, because the Geonim, I have the feeling, felt that the women were a little bit slighted. And you have to understand the fact that they added a blessing when it was not customary to do so meant how much they felt that something has to be done. Okay, it's an interesting thing. Maybe I'll talk about that next time too. But anyhow, I just want to mention what the Matbea Bracha is. I'll talk about it a little bit more next time. Next time, I want to go into the details of the categories. Let's look at the various blessings. And then after that, we'll talk about Birkot HaNe'anim, which has the most details in it. Which bracha do you make on what type of food, etc. Okay, so are there any questions? Okay, if there are no questions, I